America is getting tremendous influx of pro-family films. When we started Movieguide in 1985, there were only 6 family films. Now it's about 50% of the films. They're aimed at families.
Well, I keep reading about the astonishing amount of money being made out of porn, and you're actually saying...
Porn doesn't make very much money. The more Christian content, the better it does at the box office. The more nudity, the less money it makes. The more sex, the less money it makes. The more violence, the less money it makes. The average person wants to see good. They need good. They need hope. 18 million people in the United States don't have fathers. They want hope. They want signs of Superman coming into their life and changing their life.
As we look on America now, and particularly if you're listening to the mainstream media, it's a place hopelessly divided. It's a place that's falling apart. It's never going to recover. It's crippled by debt. It's crippled by division.
So every time somebody says, this is the end, America's had revival.
Dr. Ted Baehr is the founder and publisher of Movieguide, chairman of the Christian Film and Television Commission Ministry in America, as well as a noted critic, educator, lecturer, and media pundit. His life's purpose is to be used of God to redeem the values of the media while educating audiences on how to use discernment in selecting their entertainment. Ted is deeply informed and a lot of fun, so I hope you enjoy this. Ted, thanks so much for giving us your time. This is going to be fun.
It is fun.
Because you know all about it and I know nearly nothing.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, but I know nearly
People
nothing.
have been bragging about you for 2 days. It's absolutely incredible. Everywhere I go.
You know, there's 5 of them and you must have met all 5?
I met all 5 of them.
Yeah, I'm encouraged already.
All these people.
But Ted, you're an expert in an area that I'm not. So I'm really going to be in your hands in this conversation. And the first thing I'd say to you is that it strikes me that every culture down through the ages, you can tell a great deal about them and even the way they were shaped by the entertainment and the absorption in their culture of whether it's plays, whether it's films, whatever. So you think the Greek tragedies, and people used to pour out in vast numbers to go to the amphitheatres and listen to the Greek tragedies or participate in them. You think of Shakespeare and the extraordinary wisdom of Shakespeare and the fame that he accumulated. Then you could jump to, say, Gilbert and Sullivan, popular musicals.
Wonderful stuff. All of it wonderful.
Then you can think of the golden age of Hollywood, as it's called. What can we say about our culture, America, Australia, the West, from our viewing habits, our entertainment absorption today?
Well, I can't say much about Australia about it, but I can say a lot about America. America is getting a tremendous influx of pro-family films. When we started Movieguide in 1985, there were only 6 family films. Now it's about 50% of the films. They're aimed at families. That doesn't mean they're always appropriate, but they're aimed at families. Superman, Fantastic Four, all the biggest moneymaker movies. And secondly, we've seen a lot of positive Christian content. When we started in 85, if you saw a Christian, usually it was a priest, because you could Hollywood likes visual symbols, so the collar was a visual symbol. And he had a knife in his hand in Poltergeist. He was knocking on your door to kill you. Today, about 69% of the movies have positive Christian content. In other words, a minister performing a wedding or a funeral, especially in military movies and especially in cop movies, etc. So there's a tremendous change in the atmosphere in Hollywood. Now, when the rest of the world moves along with that change, I don't know. But Hollywood needs to pay bills. And the movies that make more money are the movies that reach the biggest audience. They do make movies for every audience. Every week in the United States, about 110 to 116 million people go to church. And about 7 to 16 million people go to movies. So church is about 10 times more than the movie industry. Companies make movies for different people. It's like car companies. They make convertibles for John when he was young and he was trying to date. And they make
Careful.
the guy Cam yesterday, who's driving me around, it says his father has a 1952 Morgan, which is a beautiful car. So there's all sorts of cars for different people. Well, Hollywood, my wife was Argentine, so they make movies for Spanish-speaking people in Spanish. They make movies for African Americans, Tyler Perry. But all of those are limited because the Tyler Perry, the African American audience, is just about 20%, and the Spanish-speaking audience is about 30%. But we told them the biggest audience is the Christian audience, and they include all those other groups, by the way, and they've made more and more movies for that big audience because they got to pay their bills. They also make two types of movies. I don't know whether you want to hear this or not. They make movies to make money because Warner Brothers has 61,000 people working there. They got to pay them. And then they make movies to receive awards. And those are the little cheeky movies that nobody wants to see, but they, their fellow people that are voting for them are like the people voting in the parliament in Australia.
Unrepresentative, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Unrepresentative?
Yeah.
Isn't that it? So they make them for awards because those awards are decided by people who are not mainstream?
My friend who made Hacksaw Ridge, I went in
Mel
to talk
Gibson.
to give him, no, not Mel. Well, I know Mel, and we convinced him to take the F word out of Hacksaw Ridge, which was a great decision because with the F word, it would have excluded a big audience there, and it was about a Christian. I know he was 7 Day Adventist, but he was a Christian, and he said, "Give me one more life," and he saved him. But the producer of the show is one of the biggest producers in Hollywood, and he said, quite bluntly, when I gave him his award, we make movies for two types of movies. I make movies to win awards, and I make movies to make money. But he's a Christian, so he's making movies to make money because that's what he likes doing.
Now, this is really interesting because, as you say, Australia is 27 million people. The audience is quite small. Right. America is getting on for 400. That's massive. That's going to have a huge influence on what's produced. But more than that, in this day and age, of course, that means American influence goes everywhere. So if you take Superman 1, he's your out-and-out simple hero. There are no complications. Superman 2, well, he's got a few issues. He's still a hero, but he's very human, and there are areas of his life where he's got an issue. And as this sort of almost victimhood culture swept the world from around that type on, it struck me, and I was talking to a British academic, and he said the way culture is exported out of America can be seen by those two movies, spread right across South America, then out into Europe and what have you. So
I have two answers for you, but I'm anticipating your question, so maybe you don't want
to. Go straight to the answers, yeah. Okay. Tell us what you think.
In the first place, the latest Superman, which has done close to $600 million at the box office, there was a lot of criticism among professional negative nabobs, and they hadn't seen the movie. The movie is about Superman constantly trying to save people. At the beginning of the movie, he's trying to save a little girl, then he tries to save a dog. Even at the end, when he's facing Lex Luthor and he's got him caught, he says, "Lex, you can turn around your life." Every movie can boil down to one simple premise. The simple premise is love defeats greed. Lex Luthor is so greedy, he has to kill Superman so that he can take over the world. So love defeats greed is a very positive message with a lot of Christian undertones to it. So it's got a great message. Now I see, people on the air, criticizing something never seen. They don't know what the movie is. They don't know what the scenes are. They pick up some statement from an actor or whatever, which is not the movie. An average movie, you've got 30,000 people working on it. If you talk to the costume person, he says, I'm a left-wing commie pinko rat. That doesn't mean the movie is a left-wing commie pinko rat. So you're misinterpreting. It's a fallacy of extrapolation from the minority and then painting the whole thing bad. Fantastic Four is probably the most pro-life movie ever made. She's about to have a baby. This Galactus is trying to take the baby because it's a super baby to replace him so he doesn't have to devour planets anymore. She refuses to give up the baby. The whole world is against her. They want her to give up the baby to die, to be a sacrifice to Galactus, abortion, whatever you want to call it. She won't do it. This is my baby. This is, my life. This is the future. If we give up the baby, we're giving up our humanity. So you've never seen a movie that's more pro-life, and it made $400 million at the box office. So these movies, and I know usually most of the producers. Last year, the biggest movie was Inside Out 2. The producers come to the Movieguide Awards a couple of times. He comes up to me and says, you know, I'm a Christian. I said, I know you've come to us. And he says, the director's a Christian, the writer's a Christian. So as soon as you look at it in terms of the principles of the movie, which we do, the nature of reality, the nature of knowledge, you know, as Christians, I don't know whether I can say that to you, but as Christians, we believe that we can really know because God reveals himself. We're not just relativists. We're not in the, you know, in the darkness all the time. As Christians, we believe in it's a real world with real pain and real. So these people are people that have our values, that are executing our values in the biggest movies that are being made.
I just gave a talk this morning, coincidentally, and I was asked to do this. I touched on the impact that pain has had in my life, and I made the point that everyone in the room, every one of you, will know pain. Our therapy culture says, no, you couldn't, and if you know pain, you're a victim. So go and get the victim, and the pain will go away. But we all know it's not like that. We're all dealing with pain. We're all trying to make sense of it. You're painting a very different picture, though, to the way in which, I suppose you'd say, the progressives think the world should go.
I know, but that's the way people want it to go. The reason that movies that have strong biblical content do better in places like India, which is a nominalistic culture, or Saudi Arabia, which is a fatalistic culture, Passion of the Christ did about 2 times in terms of box office per capita than the United States. People rush to see the Passion of the Christ.
In Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia. And you're not supposed to have churches.
The Passion.
Yeah, only within restricted areas. Because the average person that's working to survive wants hope. They want a savior. They know it's real. Whatever you tell them, then, oh, your pain is unreal. Oh, your struggles are ridiculous. Don't pay any attention to them. Oh, the government.
Or it's someone else's fault.
Yeah.
Or which is the cruelest thing you can do of all.
Yeah. Somebody's going to give you money to take care of it. Yeah. They know it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
They know none of that works.
That's what I recognized
so
this morning.
In their heart, in their heart, they know they need the passion of the Christ. They need somebody who dies for them, somebody who protects them, somebody who loves them.
You're painting an America that, it's news to me, and I think I follow what's happening a bit. But you're painting an America that's changing more than we're realizing. That's the value of us.
Well, this is a great report, which I've given you. Every year we do that. Next year, come out to our gala. You know, and be part of it. On February 7th, we have all these Hollywood stars and people. The heads of Amazon, one of them got up and gave his testimony. Just incredible. The head of CFO of Netflix, who makes the final decision, did door-to-door evangelism. He tried to date my daughter. He's got a wonderful wife now. My daughter found somebody more spectacular. But anyway, so there's a lot of people who have faith in value. I mean, door-to-door evangelism. And he's the final guy to decide on what pictures. So,
well, you're here in Australia.
I love Australia.
That's great. I do too.
Yeah.
And actually, as it happens, I greatly admire America as well. But as we look on America now, and particularly if you're listening to the mainstream media, it's a place hopelessly divided. It's a place that's falling apart. It's never going to recover. It's crippled by debt. It's crippled by division. You've got a crazy president. You know, you're in Australia. You know that all that stuff's there. You're painting a picture of an America potentially changing, coming back together?
Yeah.
Is that what you're painting?
The Bible says that one side of an argument sounds good until you hear the other side. I walked out of the cathedral, what was that, St. Andrews?
The Anglican.
The last time I was here a year ago. And there are all these death to America, America's evil, the Nazi America, etc. I mean, these people, they have no clue what's in America. They can go to American and set up the same tables and complain. We don't mind. So it's a mistake that they're looking down on a country that gives the maximum amount of freedom to the maximum amount of people. And, you know, as a Christian in America, which is one of those 116 million who go to church every week, I love babies. I love freedom. I love women. My wife, I was a one-woman man. She had chemotherapy for 26 years. She was supposed to live 4 years. Every day was a miracle. I believe you have to be loyal and decent. So I like those values of Christianity, and you can hold that in America. You're not trying to get rid of morality, decency, etc.
Well, as I tried to say earlier, clumsily, but you can tell a lot about a culture about what they're watching. So what are they watching? What are they watching and who's watching
Well, I
it?
give it to you here. The
Yeah.
more Christian content, the better it does at the box office. The more nudity, the less money it makes. The more sex, the less money it makes. The more violence, the less money it makes. So if you look at the Academy Award winners last year, the top one was made by a guy who'd made 2 pornographic films. It was really a pornographic film. It did $32 million at the box office. At $10 a ticket, that's 3.2 million people in a country of 360 million people, more because they include Canada in the box office. Meanwhile, the number one movie did $2 billion at the box office, and it was about the joy of the Lord this is grace. The joy of the Lord is my strength. So you contrast good to bad.
A dummy like me would say, well, I keep reading about the astonishing amount of money being made out of porn. And you're actually saying...
Porn doesn't make very much money.
Turns a lot
I gave
over.
it to you, 32 million for Honora, pure porn. The second movie out there was about a Mexican cartel head who went trans to escape the feds, the federales, and he came back to his family and they didn't recognize him. That movie did about 18 million. 18 million at $10 a ticket is 1.8 million people in a country of 3. We do the numbers all the time.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. The trouble is, beside the press that just wants to see something shocking, which is a lot of people in the press because they're saturated with media, is that they want to be negative. I teach this. I was head of a department at Berkeley. If it bleeds, it leads. So the press always has to be introducing negative information. When the fires were occurring, 4 or 5 years ago in Australia, American headlines, Australia's burning, it's the end of Australia, worst fires that they've ever had. Well, I don't think so. Last year's fires was around our house, 132 buildings, people died. But the worst fires in the West Coast was in 1881, which went all the way from the coast to the Rocky Mountains, which is about 1,200 miles, and all the way up to Canada and down to Mexico. And all the animals were fleeing. They said the animals went 1881.
Yeah.
So we forget.
We get that here too.
Well, so I get calls from, and I've been on Oprah and I've been on CNN a lot of times and Hannity and Combs, and I get called and say, let's say The Chosen, is this the first Christian movie that's been done? I said, well, you forgot that in 1897, the Lumiere brothers made the first Passion of the Christ, and then in 1898, you had 2 Passions of Christ and 1 Nativity story, and I can hear them on the other line getting bored. When I went to I'm a member of the Critics Award, Critics' Choice Award, and a member of the Producers Guild. I went in, they were giving Greta Gerwig, who said my version of the Chronicles of Narnia, she loved it. But anyway, she's being presented as the first woman to break through the barriers that men have created against women in film. Well, actually, one of the biggest producers and directors of all time was in 1890s, Blanche in France. She did 2,000 movies, and they were the best sellers. So Barbara Steinweg, there were a lot of people who were at the head of the industry, a lot of people who controlled companies who were women. This is all a myth because you've got to make it news. And it's not news if there's been all these people succeeding. It's news if this is the first person to succeed in 150 years of the film industry.
So who's going to see the films in America today?
It's kids. Children are the market for films.
Why would they do that when Dad's got a...
So what happens is that the average child, and I was speaking last week to a lawyer, and he said, I took my wife to the theater, and that was the first time I kissed her. So they want to get out of the house. If they're watching in the best sound system, best movies projection, they got their mother or their father, would you like some lemonade? Would you like some popcorn? She's always looking in to make sure they're not touching, not kissing, so they go to the theater, and there's 2 advantages. 1, you're in a dark theater, so nobody knows what you're doing. Number 2, you don't have to talk to the girl because you're only 18 and you don't know how to talk to a girl. And number 3, when you leave, you can get ice cream and you can talk about the movie, which is sort of a veiled way. Did you see this wonderful scene between Tom Cruise and his co-star?
That is really interesting. So my generation's not going to the movies in the same numbers?
Once you get married, it's a much more difficult process than a young person. And movies are made, Superman is not made for a 40, 50, 60-year-old. It's made for somebody between 18 and 30. You get married, you have to pay for a babysitter, or you take a crying baby to the theater. I know, I've got 18 grandchildren, and my daughter is always being invited to an event, and she's got a little baby, and she won't go because she doesn't want the baby screaming, and I love the baby. I'm not criticizing. So once you have a baby, then the ticket prices go up, the food prices go up, the parking goes up, everything in your life goes up, so you might as well stay home and watch it at home.
There was a truly dramatic drop-off in productions, I gather, during COVID, essentially coming back up a little bit, but it's still, to somebody who's from the arc on all this stuff, I'm being really honest with you, it seems counterintuitive. The kids are all on stream, they've all got their screens, they've all got their ways of downloading movies, and then there's streaming, but you're saying that your classic filmmaking, movie in America, I think you said, cinema in Europe, film in Australia, there's still a place for films made for movies for people to go out and sit in a theatre. And that's still playing a lead role. That's what you're, or even a more important role.
Studios need theatres.
Right.
When MGM or Paramount or somebody, Paramount yesterday was in Variety this morning, and I sent it to my staff to write an article about it, said they're not going to focus on streaming. Disney a couple of months ago said they're going to pull back on streaming because the box office is a cash register. So they know that if the movie makes, like Minecraft that my friend did last night that made $400 million in a couple of weeks, he attributed that to us because the secular critics didn't like it, and we like it because it's a family film, and we reach 69 million people at $10 a ticket. That's wonderful. And most kids want to go they don't want to sit next to the girl and be embarrassed, right? Or the guy and be embarrassed. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work no matter what you are. So they need theaters need the box office, and children need a place to go that they can get a cheap vacation. If they can't go to Australia for their vacation, they can stay home and watch Australia from Baz Luhrmann, which is a terrible film.
Well, there was Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, Crocodile Dundee was wonderful, and it was a big blockbuster. And it surprised everybody because it came out in September, and it broke the back of the projections. They always said anyway, movies are up from last year, and they're almost at the level they were in 2018. Minecraft made over 400 million. Superman made he told me last night made 600 million. Superman did over 400 million. Fantastic Four. So these are all the big films. Every week, Hollywood releases 5 movies. That's why I'm holding up 4 fingers, because the 5 movies.
That's a lot of movies.
Yeah, because people don't go to 5 movies. So one movie will succeed, let's say Fantastic Four. One movie will do a little bit at the box office, Weapons, and the rest of the movies bomb at the box office. So I'll ask people, including your staff, which I could do right now, how many movies do they release on streaming every year? Now that Paramount and Disney have cut back, last year they only released 143 movies. That means they understand that's just the law of supply and demand. In the movie business of business, in 1922-23, the IRS said, do you want to be classified as an art for special taxes or as a business? They said, we want to be a business. They've got to make money. And to make money, they got to be in the theaters. And so they're not doing and streaming, even if you watch all the time, one movie a week, I mean, how many movies can you watch when you're at home streaming? How many movies do you watch a week?
Me, almost none.
So you prove my point.
Yeah. All right, now this is really interesting stuff. You're painting a picture of a culture, I'd almost say, that's starting to recenter in America.
But I believe that's because I don't know if I can say this on your show, created in the image of God. So I believe every person wants the good to triumph over evil. My wife was on chemotherapy for 26 years. Evil films, hospital films, people dying and committing suicide and euthanasia films. Why would she want to watch that? She's going to the hospital. They removed her bladder, uterus, ovaries. She had a very serious disease. It wasn't cancer. It was cicatricial pemphigoid. She didn't want to watch that. How many millions of people are out there who have tough lives who want good news to triumph? When I was head of the department at Berkeley, if you're a teenager or a student at Berkeley or at City University, I was in the graduate schools of both, you think that good triumphing over evil is not what you want. You want to see tough, gritty films that may be something else. But the average person wants to see good. They need good. They need hope. 18 million people in the United States don't have fathers. They want hope. They want signs of Superman coming into their life and changing their life.
I'll come back to that in a moment. You talk about people wanting hope, going to, in a way, escape, but also be encouraged, I suppose you'd say.
Yes.
So you had, if I'm right, I think it's true to say that one of the few areas of America that actually prospered during the Great Depression was Hollywood.
Yes.
Because they probably couldn't afford to go out to that expensive diner or go interstate for a holiday or whatever, but they could afford to go to the movies.
Well, I'll tell you something. I was talking last night because I was teaching on media wisdom and children and raising your children to be media wise, which I teach all the time.
Oh, do you?
Got 60 professors together in the 70s, developed the first media literacy course. We're very good at picking out the stages of development. So
Is there something online we can refer people to?
Yes,
the Media Wise family. Will be interested in that.
Lily had over 30 doctors, and I'm talking to one of them one month, and she sounds stressed. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "My daughter is cutting." I said, "Okay, take my book, The Media Wise Family." How old is she? I knew she was about 15 to 17 because that's a stage of development that kids go through. 62% of the young women, 66% feel that they're not good enough when they see these made in Beverly Hills women on TV, etc. So they're feeling that they're not good enough. I said, "Is she the smartest person?" Yes. I sent her the book. The daughter read the chapter. She came to Christ and she went back to her public school to stop her friends from cutting, which was a big movement. So, we teach people how to be media wise. But by going off on that track, I lost the first track.
The first question was that Hollywood continued to make money right through the Great Depression.
Yeah, well, I'll give you...
But very shortly after that came the act, I can't remember what it was called, because there was a view amongst legislators in Washington and the general population that Hollywood was becoming degenerate and producing movies that were too racy
I can explain all of that.
Yeah,
okay.
Just a bit of history there.
Okay, but first I'm going to say that the Great Depression, I'm sorry to say, in Europe, people look toward men to solve their problems. Franco, Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin. In America, we had a tremendous revival during the Great Depression. You had Billy Sunday at the end of the Great Depression. You had Billy Graham. We had revival break out all over the country. And in 1812, the Supreme Court justice said that America had become so secular, it would never become Christian again. Revival broke out. In the Civil War, Lincoln said, that America has forgotten God. Revival broke out among the North and the South. So every time somebody says, this is the end, America's had revival, I'm sorry to say, I think God is in charge of this whole situation. In terms of the movie industry, at the beginning of the movie industry, as I keep saying, there were a lot of Christian films. And actually there's a reason for that, beside the fact that many of those early producers, Vitagraph, et cetera, biggest studio that was built, turning out more movies than they turn out today. Vitagraph, and a friend of mine, Andy Irish, wrote the book on it and wrote the book on the man who invented Hollywood. But there were a lot of good morality tales and Christian stories, and most of them were being shown in churches. Because there's a book called Silence of God, and they'd have a portable projector, and they'd put it into the church because the church was empty and it was a natural auditorium. There's still a Methodist church on 57th Street in New York that used to be the biggest movie house. Then in the 1910s, the Nickelodeon operators decided, if you're going to put it in church, we're not going to carry it in the theater. They needed the theater box office. They gave up on churches. In the 20s, movies became very debauched, And at the end of the 20s, you had just, I'll go into it in a second. In 1922, 23, they hired a corrupt government official. I don't want to say government officials are corrupt. And he had been involved
Never heard of him.
in the Teapot
No
Dome
such thing.
scandal. He had all of his fingers and everything. He was hired by the studios to fend off the attacks. You had ratings boards being set up in Boston. I know you want to talk about ratings boards being set up. Banned in Boston was common. He went up to Boston. This was in the 1920s. He spent $500,000 buying off the legislator of Boston. Of course, you can't buy legislators, so it couldn't happen that way. No. But anyway, that's what he tried to do. By the end of the 20s, movies had become so debauched that Hedy Lamar's first movie was 13 to 14 minutes of nudity and sex. Pure nudity and sex.
Is that right? Way back then?
Barbara Steinbeck was when she was 12 years old, and one of her first movies was being sold by her father to pay, who was Edward G. Robinson, to pay his debts. Three men, Joseph Breen, Martin Quigley, Daniel Day-Lord, I inherited all the files from the church film offices, came in and said to Hollywood, we can show you how to make more money. You're suffering. Hollywood was the least favorite place for movies. Germany was bigger, France was even bigger, England was bigger. Alfred Hitchcock started in England, probably the greatest director of all time. So Hollywood cleaned up. They cleaned up Hollywood, these three men, by showing them how to make more money from 1929 to 1933. Then Hollywood was mostly G-rated. If you had had ratings, they didn't have ratings. I can explain why ratings don't work. Until 1965, I inherited the files from the Protestant Film Office. George Heinrich was head of it. The National Council of Churches shut down the Protestant Film Office. The head of Paramount Pictures said, if you take the salt from the meat's going to rot. So the church left Hollywood. The Catholic Film Office, they moved back. Henry Hyde, a friend of mine, moved back to New York. Well, they had no influence in New York because Hollywood is in Hollywood. So they left. We went from 1965, where it was a 100% G-rated movie, The Sound of Music, The Greatest Story Ever Told, I mean, just wonderful movies, until 3 years later, you went to 82% R-rated movies, restricted movies. You had Sex and Satanism and Rosemary's Baby. You had the first overtly homosexual movie in 1960. So from 65 to 68, the movie industry collapsed because the church left Hollywood. Evil will triumph when good men do nothing. You know this in your own life.
Astonishing.
And then movies in the late 60s got very debauched. I'm not going to go into all the details. But then you had a little mini revival at the beginning of 70s. I helped with the production of Jesus of Nazareth, Vincenzo La Bella. I helped with the production of the Jesus film. There's another whole force going underneath here that I can tell you about, the demographic changes that take place. Then in the late 70s, you went downhill again. Then in the 80s, you had another peak, et cetera, that picked up. And so the movie industry also follows a rhythm. The rhythm is the rhythm of demographics. After World War II, you had a lot of babies being born. So in the 1950s, those people, the parents, wanted their kids to grow up with their values. So you saw Daniel Boone and, Quo Vadis and Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments. And then in the 60s, those kids born like me and the baby boom became teenagers and they were rebellious. And then you had all those rebellious movies that came out. And then we got married and had children, and people wanted the Jesus film and Jesus of Nazareth. And now you have a new wave of young people who are getting married, having children. My children are having children. And they want to watch The Chosen. They want to watch The House of David. So the House of David is one of the biggest streaming programs on there. Chosen gets 100 million people.
Tell me about House of David. That's how much I know.
It's done by a friend of mine, John Irwin. John Irwin did a lot of really wonderful movies. I Still Believe, If You Believe, all these great movies. They didn't make much, but when he's learning the whole time, and I teach how to make films. It's got to be simple, and that's very difficult, etc. So anyway, House of David was produced by Amazon, produced in Greece. They flew me over there, picked me up at 2:45 a.m. I got there at 11 a.m. We did 2 days of work, flew back from Greece to Los Angeles, and on Sunday I flew to Australia. So that's my life. And then I had to go back to Greece. This was last year's trip to Australia. So anyway, John has produced The House of David, about David. It's very biblical, incredibly well made, and it's been the #1 streaming show for a while.
You say that the industry follows demographics.
To a degree.
To a degree, because that's what I'm going to ask about. We're getting a lot of reportage now, the Generation Z. They're basically the kids born after 1995, up to about 30 now. They are returning to the centre, if you like. They're regrounding. They're rejecting what you call liberalism.
They want less sex, less nudity, less violence.
Yeah, that's sort of almost counterintuitive, because the industry would have you believe, and the pundits and the critics, that's not what they'd have you believe.
Well, you know, the industry, people do, I've been head of department, I teach this. You've got, in the media, you've got the press. The press is sort of the fringe shock troops that are trying to make everybody scared so that they all, you know, hide. And you get addicted to news because you get addicted to bad news. There's an earthquake coming, or let's say a tidal wave, because we just had that 2 weeks ago, coming to Southern California. Everybody gets scared. They keep watching the news to find out when the tidal wave's going to hit. The tidal wave hit, I think, at 1:09 a.m. in the morning, and it was nothing. So they got to find another crisis.
Yeah.
But the movie industry is playing on the fact that they want to sell Winnie the Pooh dolls. They want to sell Superman cakes. They want to sell capes. They want to sell Mickey Mouse. They want to do something that kids want to see. So the movie industry is not the other side of the media, the press. The press is a different entity.
Yep.
And the problem with the press, I can't say this in Australia,
I'm sure you
is
can.
the press is pretty much socialist in the United States. The reason it's socialist is because they don't make money. But the 1934 Communications Act prescribed that every television network had to have a news source because they were worried about hurricanes and tsunamis and whatever else, so you had to have news. So the networks were always paying too much. Many years ago, in the 80s, many years ago, I'm getting old, CBS wanted to cancel its news. It was the premier news because it costs money. And you've got to have people on the ground and wherever the tsunami hits in Alaska, and you've got to have the people on the ground in Gaza, and you've got to have the people on the ground. So it's a money absorbing, but it's not a money generating. Very few people watch the press. And
well, they don't trust it anymore.
yeah, they
Doesn't
don't
seem to occur to people in
a
the
big
media.
article today, news item that they did a release of testing people, and the majority of people in America think that all the news is fake news. They do not believe any of this news. The Washington Post, the New York Times, another article today is that the New York Times is in serious trouble. So they've just shot themselves in the foot so often they can't stand.
I'd be really interested in your views. I mean, we're counter media. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Mainstream.
You're
We're
doing
online.
great. I love it.
Well, it's taking hold.
You know,
I can't walk down the street without somebody saying, just listen to your conversation on. Happens all the time.
well, don't listen to this.
I walked 3 blocks last night. I was pulled up 3 times by young people.
Let me say something that I was telling the filmmakers. It's extremely important, and you're doing it, so I can say it in confidence. I was on another show yesterday and another show the day before. You're doing good news. The early church, as you know, because you seem to know a lot of history, was good news. When the Romans were throwing the babies over the wall, the Christians were catching them and saving them. When the Romans were...
Particularly the girls. So you know,
Yes, and widows, and the wives that were being mistreated. Rome treated wives terribly. You couldn't go out of the house. So the church was offering good news for 300 years until Constantine, and even past that, which changed the world. It turned Rome right side up. It was terrible under Tiberius. We don't want to talk about it. Nobody would watch our show. So Movieguide believes in good news. We watch every movie, but we tell people this is the good news. You can watch this in streaming. You can watch this online. So we get 69 million people because people gravitate toward good news. and I get on a plane, oh, we know Movieguide. So just like people know what you're doing, because they want to be given good news. They don't want to be hit all the time. You got to watch this worst movie of all time. So
now the next question that arises, of course, is who's listening to what? So we know in this country, the younger people they're all online. They're not listening to mainstream media. They're just not.
same thing.
They're all online. But the viewing habits are completely different.
I know.
Completely. And so, broadly speaking, in this country, young men will go for sport, economics, politics. And they'll be listening to, interestingly, it's not someone like me, it's the guests that they're coming on to hear and that they're learning from, that they're being shaped by. And that's precisely, it's not for me to try and lead on these things. I'm trying to make your views known and give you that opportunity, or people the opportunity to hear what you've got to say. We know, though, that there's a problem there because people will gravitate towards the views they like, and the algorithms will feed that, and they won't necessarily get a diversity of views. Nonetheless, one of the other things that's happening is that men are really quite engaged now, and they've got a lot of role models out there that are putting on a lot of guests that are really keeping them up to date. It appears that, at this point anyway, younger women are not tapping into the things that are really telling them what's happening in the world. It's more oriented towards their lifestyle and social competitiveness and so forth. It's quite different. How do you get balance in all of this, do you think? And how do you turn it
I'm
into
not
a
sure
net positive?
you're going to. I mean,
Big
one of
question.
the charts I'm going to show tonight is that adults over 60 watch the news or listen to the news or read the news, and kids don't. They don't want the news. And, kids are listening to MTV or whatever it happens to be, or latest, a streaming network, and the adults are not. So we're at different extremes. I have a chart with each stage of development and who's watching and who's doing exactly what you said. You're 100% correct. So how are you going to resolve that? I think it's age. Again, it's the connected to demographics is spirographics and psychographics. Psychographics is the older people. They're worried. They get more concerned about the world around them. They want to know if Gaza is going to blow up or if there's going to be a robbery in the neighborhood. They become more addicted to the news. I mean, I'm sure we can give all sorts of psychological explanations for that. Younger kids think they're going to live forever. They don't care, and they don't want to pay attention to bad news.
How does that fit with the mental illness problem? They're worried that climate change is going to kill them. They're all going to fry. They're all going to starve. The world's going to blow up. You get a fair bit of that too.
But that's always, you've got to look at who that's affecting and where they are. It's like the kid that, the young girl, 15-year-old, who was cutting and then read my chapter in my book and stopped cutting and started going back to her public school, not a private school, not a Christian school, and won people to Christ and stopped them from cutting. So they get so much negative information, it's hard to escape it. But the good news is that negative information is dying.
Let's drill a bit more down into those young people that are now going to movies, and you've touched on this. There is a change underway, I think, isn't there? People are looking again for a bit of meaning.
Yes.
A way to make sense of the world.
Yes.
And it's quite prevalent in those under 30s. What would your observations be about America and where it's going culturally? What will the next generation... Do you see that work that suggests they're less patriotic, they're less committed to family, less committed to the flag,
You must be reading the Australian news.
No, that came from an American...
Well, then it must have been CNN or something. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Don't worry about it. If you're a lawyer, I assume you're a lawyer.
Me? No, I wouldn't want to know.
Okay. Well, I went
Why do you assume I'm a lawyer?
I went in because you were a politician. I went in, and most politicians in America are attorneys. But
was true here.
If the facts win the case, you have to look at the facts. What are they choosing? What are they buying? What are they putting their money into? How are they voting at the box office? That's what's really happening. And I'll give you an example. During the first, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump, but I'll mention him, the first election, all of the pundits said that he was going to be trounced. They said he was just going to lose by great margins. And PBS, which is being abolished, National Public Radio, NPR actually, afterwards got these Rasmussen and Gallup and everybody together to say, why were you so wrong about it? And they said, because we listened to people, but we didn't pay attention to what they were doing. And that's the answer. Instead of, everybody tries to talk it up as if they're part of the game, the crowd. Like my friend who did Hacksaw Ridge saying we want to make movies to win an award. So to be in the club, they've got to pretend that they're in the club. Last night, Cale said, I love your work. I'm a conservative. He actually is a mega. He loves mega. His wife loves it. So he's the head of one of the biggest companies. But if you go into a group of Hollywood people, he said before in my class, he said, we don't talk. There's a few group of radical progressives, whatever you want to call them. I was one of those. I was a card-carrying member of a communist organization, the National Lawyers Guild. I grew up in the entertainment industry. My mother died when I was young. I did a lot of drugs, a lot of salacious material, and Jesus saved me out of radically when I was in my late 20s. But you want to go along with the crowd. I started the environmental law office at NYU Law School and at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I was one of those people. And you don't have faith, what you've got is a big mouth.
You must have had some fascinating conversations with so many of Hollywood's greats. Anything interesting you can share with us? People who have been able to give you really powerful insights, really powerful stories about how they've changed, how they've learned, how they've grown?
The Academy Awards, the Oscars, according to Variety and the Hollywood Reporter and LA Times, now when people see who's won, they don't go to the movie. They know that this is a movie they can't go to. When they started, my father won the box office award in 1936. The Academy Awards were started. There are only 4 major studios today and 2 major streamers. There was 9 major studios at that time. RKO, I could go through them, but it doesn't do you any good. So anyway, they wanted to promote their movies. There was the Western Film Distributors Awards. There was a box office award that my father won. So they started the Academy Award to promote Hollywood major movies from the major studios. But then in the 1980s, they lost control of the Hollywood of the Oscars, because the rule for becoming part of the Oscars is you do 2 movies and you get 2 people to support you. And in the late 70s, the government gave a tremendous tax break. The government is always doing silly things. A tax break to tax shelter films. I actually financed 5 films before I came to Christ through this process. And you mean that a lot of independents who were making films, not movies, then got to join the Academy. Let's say in the actors part of the Academy, you've got 6,000 people. In the directors, you got about 1,000 people. So suddenly in the late 90s, actually the early 90s, forgive me, you had the independents take over. And instead of supporting big films, like you said, you loved Chariots of Fire, done by David Putnam, that won because the old timers were voting for Chariots of Fire. And my friend at Warner Brothers turned it into a great movie, and he was one of my best friends. But then the independents came in, and they wanted more edgy, they wanted more pornography, they wanted more violence, and it went downhill from that point. So the Academy was lost to the studios. So you're asking me what surprised me more than anything else. I used to have the head of one of the biggest studios, probably the biggest studio, come to the movie. A lot of people come, but Movieguide Awards. And I finally, after 3 years, said, why are you coming to the Movieguide Awards? I mean, we're not the Academy Awards. He said, because I can't get an Academy Award, but I can get a Movieguide Award. And we reach a gigantic audience. So he wants that audience. So he comes. We also have a lot of people who come to the Movieguide Awards who come to Christ. Chuck Norris, whose real name is Carlos. He probably didn't want me to say that, so don't show this in America. He grew up on the wrong side of Tucson, Arizona, and he was a tough kid, and he went into the army, and he went to Korea, and he learned martial art, but he became very Eastern religion. And when he came to the Movieguide Awards, he knows this, he was living with his current wife, and he decided, he came to Christ. I got him discipled. He married his wife, and he's become the most conservative guy in the media. I had a man who did the #1 show on ABC come, and I've got a video of him that I can show you after this that you'd love. He was Muslim. He came to the show. He'd done Pat the 9/11 #1 miniseries, and he got awarded. He said it changed his life. He became a Christian. So we see people whose lives are changed. We got videos of a lot of them, so it makes a big difference. So we can show it to people and say, look, these are some of the biggest people in Hollywood, and they're changing their lives 180 degrees. Again, I'm going to go back to God has planted a desire for the good in people's hearts. People are sinners. Everybody's a sinner. We can't be improved by education. We can't be improved by discipline. We can't be improved. We're improved because God takes over our life and changes our life for the good, the true, and the beautiful.
We've talked about how movies are for young people. They're the ones that go to them. And they're the ones that have a lot to do with whether they succeed or not. And they're looking for something quite different now. They're looking for what we oldies might have suspected they were looking for. What would you say to a young budding filmmaker today if they were wanting to get ahead but also do the right thing?
Well, I would say doing the right thing is the bottom line. That's the whole pattern that you have to have good values in order to make good movies. But the other side of the coin, and I do this because I teach how to succeed in Hollywood. We've had some successful people come out of the course, in fact, a lot of them. We give out a prize for movies, scripts. We have a secret weapon. In 19 years, 19 of them have gone to the big screen through the major studios. So all of that is very good news. But the problem I have, and it's not my problem, it's a problem with the filmmakers, is they don't learn that filmmaking is a craft. You know, my wife was on chemotherapy for 26 years. We went to a lot of doctors. You want a doctor who understands his craft. You want a doctor who can operate on her eyes. There was only one in the country in Houston. We'd have to fly to Houston. You want somebody who knows what they're doing. And the craft of Hollywood is a business. It takes a craft. 60% of a movie is marketing and distribution. Young filmmakers come along and they think, I can make a movie and everybody's going to come watch it. It doesn't work. It's got to have a very clear premise. Anyway, I teach all this. That's a whole 5-day course and you don't want it today. You have to learn the craft. I was on the ski team.
I can believe that.
Yeah, I was on the ski team at Dartmouth. I came in third in the internationals. I beat Carl Schranz, the Olympic winner, and I quit because I wanted to become an instructor because you meet more women when you're no, sorry. But anyway, I had a coach, a 2-time Olympic winner who was my coach, Pepe Garbo, and he kept saying to me, you ski like a grossmutter. And every part of what you do, you got to get better. You've got to learn the craft. My father was on Broadway for years. He sang in Showboat in '46 when I was born. He was the lead. He was the lead up to 1986. In his 80s, when he went into town to do Whoopi as the father of bride, he was practicing all of his throat exercises. Oh, I got a better story for you. Here it is. A very prominent writer during the 60s thought that he was going to write the great American novel. And this guy upstairs was playing the scales, you know, down there, and all the time. And he got frustrated. He hit on the ceiling. He screamed, stop it. You're bothering me. I can't write my great American novel. So he ran upstairs and knocked on the door and said, you've got to stop it. I'm going to report to the landlord. What's your name? And he says, Tchaikovsky. I've got a concert today. So if you're good, it's because you practice. If you're good, you learn the craft and you keep going back to basics to know what to do. And I don't, you know, I probably can guess, but I don't understand why people think they can watch movies and make movies. It's like thinking I can watch an operation on my wife Lily's eyes and I can operate. You can't do it. You have to know the craft.
Why don't ratings work?
Why don't what?
Why don't ratings work? You indicated that you don't believe ratings work.
What happened was before ratings, you had standards.
Yeah.
Standards are like and they actually, Daniel Day-Lord, Martin Quigley, they put forth standards that you couldn't portray violence in such a way that somebody would want to copy it, that you couldn't demean somebody's religion because they were trying to counter what was happening in Germany at the time. You had to respect everybody's religion, whatever I don't want to argue this point, but the 10 standards were the 10 commandments applied to movies. In 1965, when the church left, Lyndon Johnson had a really corrupt press secretary who one day was caught. He left Johnson because he was running around the hotel nude looking for girls. And he became the head of the Motion Picture Distributors Association, which became the Motion Picture Association of America, which became the Motion Picture Association. They've dropped America. And he switched to ratings. Well, ratings actually were counterproductive. If you had an R rating, you're telling whoever is going to movies, this is where you can see forbidden fruit, forbidden material. You got rid of standards, which you said you should not do this. You shouldn't, commit adultery. You shouldn't punch your spouse in the nose, etc. To moving into relativism, that all you have to do is put a rating up there. And Hollywood understood that 82% of the movies became R-rated. They were using it like you go to a bad district in some town in Holland, and they got red lights, and those red lights, immediately that's where those people with that propensity want to go. Get rid of the red lights and say, you can't do this. You're destroying the people. They're in bondage. You're destroying yourself. 50% of the people have a sexually transmitted disease. You don't want that. So ratings replace the 10 commandments. We don't want relativistic ratings. We want solid guidelines that in Australia or someplace else, you can't, demean somebody's character. You can't lie about a politician's career. You can't do these. These are things that should be a no-brainer. Everybody should be able to agree that these are things you can't do. You can't terrorize your children. You can't, no. I'm sorry. You can't leave it to somebody to say, oh, I might want to do this. I'm glad I can go see this happen on the big screen.
Hey, Ted, it's been a lot of fun. You're a minefield of information. And
you're very kind.
I wish you all the very best.
You're very kind. Thank you for putting up with me. I feel like I'm getting too old. So I don't know if I can keep doing it, but I love being in Australia. And so thank you very much.
Great.
God bless you, John. Thank you.